Peace be to you all. Assalamu alaikum. Omar here. Today is June 2nd. I'm sorry, July 2nd. For those of you guys that don't know me, I am a family man, moderately fit, middle-aged endurance athlete, and my profession is in medicine as a physician assistant, now called a physician associate, and I'm also a health educator. That's my doctorate in health education. So today I want to talk about a hotly debated topic of affirmative action. Now, as a black guy, a so-called African American, I'm not crazy about that term. I think I like just black American, who has very strong opinions about this issue, who is an educator and a clinician, who has sat on admissions committees. I feel that I have a vested interest in this topic, and I have children in college now who have entered the work world. So, affirmative action, everybody should at least know. You can Google this. It was started during the Kennedy administration, I think 1961, and it was to try to get people who were previously discriminated against, try to get them accepted into institutions of higher learning and jobs, from which they were previously barred based on their color or race or ethnicity, etc., etc. I say etc. because every 5 years or every couple of years it seems like another group gets added onto there. Which segues into my subtopic. If we as a society are going to not accept the fact that there's only one race of humans, there's not Negroid or Caucasoid or Mongoloid, there's the human race, Homo erectus, or whatever the anthropologists call us, Homo sapiens, and that's it. The rest of how we present to the outside world is based a lot on societal laws, its national borders and boundaries, and its cultures. And you say, well, this person's a Hispanic. That's not a race. That's a language group. There's different looking people who may be considered Hispanic. Just like black. If you say, well, I'm a black guy. Say, well, okay, that's what history says. That's the language of history. So I identify as that. If you're trying to describe me. Now, unfortunately, this issue of affirmative action always seems to come down to black folks. We Negroes are taking hard-earned spots from other people. We're only 13% of the population. I think that's the highest it's ever been in recent history. So there's not that many of us going to college, and certainly not that many going to Ivy Leagues. So it always comes down to the media outlets are going around interviewing students from Harvard, which I think is the dumbest thing ever. So they're stoking the flames of this racial divide even more. And they'll interview some black student and say, what do you think about this? Oh God, it's racism. How are we ever going to survive not going to Harvard? Which is ridiculous. I don't know. I know why they do that, because it gets eyes on the news stations and eyes on the papers and things. But, it's an unfortunate thing. I'm for affirmative action in certain instances. I think that, one, statistically speaking, white women have benefited from affirmative action more than black folks. That's a fact. It's not me just saying that. You can Google that. But and in turn, I would think black men or white men, by way of white women, because those tend to be their wives and daughters, family members. So there's that. But when it comes to us black folks taking people's spots, I haven't really seen that. I'll see something along the lines of a certain racial quota. And I say this is somebody who's got multiple degrees in different fields of study, from biology to medicine. You'll have one or two blacks. I worked for a biotech firm. It was two black guys, of which I was one, working at this biotech firm as actual technicians. As a PA, I've usually been the only one, on a particular group, or maybe even, if the hospital was not an HBCU related hospital, maybe the hospital, or maybe in a clinic, I'd be the only black clinician. So I don't think that I got there because of affirmative action. I did the work necessary. I got the degrees and the licenses and certifications. So this whole issue of black people getting an unfair advantage doesn't necessarily address, guys that may have intergenerational wealth. Your trust fund kids, your stereotypical Brad or Pitt, or some guy named Chip, whose great-grandfather has been going to some Ivy League school, be it Harvard or Yale, so this guy's got intergenerational wealth, and he gets in not because of his grades, but because he's third or fourth generation Ivy League student. I know some of these people. I've talked to them. They would brag about how much beer they could chug at the party. Dude, it's awesome. And they'd get into these schools, and it's like, look, wait a minute. I outscored you on the SAT. What the heck? What's going on with that? And that's another thing. As somebody who's applied to Ivy League schools before, you have to be in the ballpark. I was applying to Columbia out of high school back in 1988, a long time ago. And I didn't get accepted. I didn't even get on the waiting list. I was not in the ballpark. My grades were average. My SATs were slightly above average. I had some extracurricular activities, but there were better qualified applicants than me. Certainly ones that were minorities. So you have to at least be in the ballpark. By that I mean your grades and your credentials to be considered for these things. It's not like a bunch of horrible black students are just getting in to these schools, these Ivy League schools. And when it comes to Ivy League schools, I tell people, like, look, consider, especially with this economic situation, and now we have the Biden administration tried to do this thing of forgiving student loans, and the Republicans said no. So you're gonna have to be responsible for your student loans. So, Ivy League is not the way to go. Trust me on that. You don't want to come out of school owing $250,000 in student loans with compounding interest because you just had to go to the Ivy League school. First, I tell students this all the time. Tell my own kids this. Consider community college. There's nothing wrong with that. See if you're capable of doing college level work and then build up to that. And if you do well, instead of flip-flopping on your major, decide what you really want to pursue with this college degree. And it's worked out for my kids. They changed their majors a couple of times, but they got their degrees, they got their associate's degrees, and now they're doing their bachelor's degrees at our local state university, University of the District of Columbia. Go Firebirds. And that's another thing. Consider going to a state school, and if you're black, certainly consider going to our wonderful HBCUs. Many of the HBCUs, I remember in the 90s, had to close their doors for lack of support. A lot of folks weren't applying there. Many of us, we cheer our kids on if they get accepted to Harvard. But if they get accepted to Howard, it's like, okay, big deal. So we have to support our HBCUs, and that way we can kind of circumvent a lot of this a lot of what I call the silliness of this affirmative action issue. That's it for now. If you want to be a PA or health care or health educator, or have an interest in higher education, I am an erstwhile college professor. I'm also a PA, like I said before, so consider subscribing, and if not, that's fine too. I wish you guys the best of success in your positive endeavors. Peace.